During a Formula One season, every driver will have a bad race. Even the best drivers in the world will have things that they regret, like a bad weekend or a big mistake on the job.
Lewis comes in and pinches him a little bit. That's not Fernando's fault. He was on the curb, under control, wasn't under...
Here is each driver's worst moment of the season. Even though he might have been unlucky to get a penalty for the incident, Verstappen's failed attempt to pass Lewis Hamilton in the S's at the Brazilian Grand Prix was one of the few low points in an otherwise great season. After having one of the best seasons in F1 history, it made people wonder if the driver was a little too eager to beat his old rival Hamilton. It also cost him the chance to win another race. Perez's crash in Q3 at Monaco not only brought out the red flag, which meant his teammate couldn't improve his time, but it also made people think it might have been on purpose, which he strongly denied. Late in the season, these ideas came up again with a vengeance. As he led the French Grand Prix, Leclerc spun into the wall at the Le Bousset right-hander. He was trying to make up for the time Verstappen had lost because he had already stopped. Leclerc took full responsibility for the crash, which cost him a lot of money, and he was hard on himself, as he always is after a race. Sainz said that he lost his mind during his short time at the Australian Grand Prix. It wasn't his fault that he started 9th because of bad luck in qualifying, or that he dropped to 13th because of a change in the steering wheel. But what he did next was, he tried to pass Yuki Tsunoda too quickly and fell back to 14th place. Then, as he passed Mick Schumacher on the second lap heading into turn 9, he understeered onto the grass and spun into the gravel trap. It's over. When Hamilton turned in on Fernando Alonso at Les Combes on the first lap of the Belgian Grand Prix, he not only put Alonso out of the race, but he also damaged the Mercedes driver's power unit. The stewards let it go because it happened on the first lap and there was a lot of movement between the cars in the first few turns, but it was clear that Hamilton was at fault.
Now we're about to see the contact between the Mercedes and the Alpine. Well, Alonso gave him as much space as he possibly could.
There's more contact there again almost, wasn't there, between those two? But it looks to me as if...
Russell's whole race in Singapore was a mess, which is not like him. First, he hit Bottas's Alfa Romeo early in the race as he was going up an escape road. Later, he pushed Schumacher into contact as the Haas driver tried to turn into the first corner. Even though he got through these things and finished, it wasn't important. At the Brazilian GP sprint, Alonso was quick to blame his teammate, but he was the one who hit the back of Esteban Ocon's car when he tried to pass him. The stewards agreed, and because of the accident that cost him his front wing, they gave him a penalty. The best part of Ocon's season was his great defense against Hamilton at Suzuka. The worst part was his fight with Hamilton at Monaco. He hit Hamilton twice, once on turn 1, for which he got a 5-second penalty, and again on the straight before the same corner. Because of the penalty, this was one of the few races where Ocon didn't get points without having bad luck. Norris tried to hold off Charles Leclerc at the La Rainha right-hander, but he hit the curb and went wide. This was a rare mistake in an otherwise good season. The Ferrari went into the wall because he hit it. Even though he thought he had been pushed into the corner, the stewards gave him the penalty. In 2022, Ricciardo's main problem was that he wasn't fast enough, but he also got into a few accidents. But his worst moment was at Interlagos.
Getaway for both Mercedes, and they could take the speed through the first few corners.
Daniel Ricciardo makes contact there with Kevin Magnussen, and there's a second contact, and they're both out of the race.
He was trying to catch Magnussen, but for some reason, he made a bad decision and spun the Haas. Even worse for Ricciardo, he then hit the spinning Magnussen as he tried to get around. Zhou wasn't all to blame for this one, but it's hard to look past the fact that he was thrown into a spectacular crash that caused the roll hoop to fail and ended with his car going over the tire barrier. On the bright side, he wasn't hurt too badly in the accident, which could have been much worse. Alfa Romeo's performance improved after a bad start, thanks to upgrades made late in the season. Bottas ran easily in the top 10 in Austin and looked like he was going to get some important points. But on lap 17, he lost control at the S's and went into the gravel. Even though there was a reason, a gust of wind that was 25 kilometers per hour faster than what he had seen before, it was a painful mistake. Vettel shouldn't have gone all the way to Australia after missing the first 2 races because of COVID-19. The weekend did not go well at all. Due to a crash in FP3, he missed most of Q1 and could only do 1 lap. In the race, he made it through a trip through the gravel at turn 11 early on, but he lost when he went wide coming out of turn 4 and hit the inside wall. Stroll is known for his aggressive defense, which usually works out well for him. But in the US Grand Prix, he moved too late when he saw Fernando Alonso attack on the back straight. This caused a crash that ended the race for the Aston Martin and sent the Alpine into the wall. Even though Alonso's car miraculously fixed itself and finished the race, Stroll was clearly at fault and was given a grid penalty for the next race. On the first lap of the Spanish GP, Magnussen was in a good position, but he made a bad mistake when he turned in on Hamilton at turn 4 and he hit the Mercedes. Because of that, he had to walk through the gravel. Magnussen thought at first that Hamilton had caused the crash by opening up his steering, but after seeing the replay, he changed his mind. Early in the season, Schumacher crashed in Saudi Arabia and Monaco, but it was the crash after the checkered flag in FP1 at Suzuka that hurt the most. In bad weather, he aquaplaned and hit the wall, which killed his chances of staying with Haas next year. At the Japanese GP, Gasly had a right to be angry when, after his first pit stop, he passed a tractor when it was hard to see. However, going 250 km per hour over the speed limit under a red flag made him look bad. Since the red flag had been waved about a second before he passed the tractor, this didn't make things more dangerous, but it wasn't right for the situation once the race was over. Formula One's most important rule is that you shouldn't crash into your teammate. Tsunoda broke this rule when he tried to pass Gasly too quickly at the British Grand Prix. To make matters worse, Verstappen picked up some of the wreckage from the crash while leading the race. This caused him to fall back and finish in 8th place. At the Spanish GP, Albon's race was ruined by a small mistake that no one saw. He damaged his car's floor when he hit the marker cone on the inside of the left-hand entry to the turn 14-15 chicane. He kept fighting, but he got a penalty for going over the track limits more than once.
So if we box, we will lose the position to Bottas, so we are monitoring it.
It was an unusually hard weekend for him, which might not have been a surprise given the damage to the Williams and its poor aerodynamics. Latifi hit the wall at Monaco before the race even started. He understeered into the wall at the hairpin while following the safety car before the race started. After a rough start to the season, it was clear at that point that staying with Williams in 2023 was no longer a realistic option. Well, that's all for today. Comment below which driver you believe had it worse during the last season.
Yeah, so that's 100% Daniel's fault, unfortunately, and then didn't recognise that the Haas was freewheeling back.